Alright, so recently I finished, or have been playing, Xenoblade Chronicles X. And I was going to do a quick text review of it, just for my friends to see, as usual when I play games. But I had so many thoughts about this one that I didn't feel right just plopping it in a text dump, and it would probably be like 10 Discord messages in length. So yeah, I didn't want to do that, really. So I just thought I'd like barf out all of my thoughts on the game, just unscripted. I have notes, obviously, but I want to just ramble on about all this shit that I want to talk about in this game. So the way I have this organized is I have the pros and I have the cons, and then last I have like the closing thoughts, like the last things I want to mention. So first I should probably like talk about a little what the game is. So Xenoblade Chronicles X is the second in the Xenoblade series, which is a sub-series of the Xeno series, blah blah blah. Most people know that. So like this is like a fully open world sorta MMO JRPG, ARPG, like it's got real-time combat, all that blah blah blah. The main thing you do in the game is explore for things and look for stuff, you know, fighting giant monsters and blah blah blah. So you play as a person who you play as a human and part of a colony called New LA that has crash landed on a planet called Mira after the Earth was destroyed by some warring force. So the main conflict in the game is figuring out, like, kind of situating yourself within this new planet and all the problems that brings on. So I'm gonna get into the pros now that I've done that. So naturally, as a Xenoblade game, the areas for the most part are super well designed and just incredibly fun to explore around. And that's kind of standard for them, but like the areas in this one are like meticulously designed. Like they are incredibly intricate and interesting to explore, and they look absolutely incredible. I don't know if I'd say they look better or worse than comparing them to Xenoblade Definitive Edition or Xenoblade 2 or even the first one. I think they definitely look better than the environments in the first game, but that's not really fair. This is what I believe is Monolith's first game in the HD era, and for that, the graphics and like the general area look of the game, as well as like the enemies and the characters and all that, look pretty incredible. Like they've aged surprisingly well. This game, it's weird to think this game is 6 years old with honestly how good it looks, and along with the hardware is released on. So one thing that this game has unique to it is that it uses the Wii U gamepad as its controller. So it has a really good application of that, which is the map is always there. In Xenoblade games, you're using the map a lot, and you're constantly looking at the map for like directions and info. And all of that is down there just by looking down at the Wii U gamepad, which is super duper convenient and feels extremely seamless. Like, there's a big reason why I don't think this game would work as well on Switch, is because you wouldn't have that. And honestly, it's that important. Like, you look down at the map and you just see all of the skip travel locations that you can just tap on. You just tap on and you go there. Double tap, you're there. You can manage your, like, a lot of the fast travel points have like manageability, like, oh, this this point is where I have a mining site, or this is where I have a research facility, and just from your Wii U gamepad you can manage all that. Like, you can manage the funds that you put into it and upgrading it and all that, which is great. That's super duper convenient. And the use of the gamepad, while not incredibly it's not incredibly innovative, a lot of Wii U games had better use of it, I think. No, I don't think. Okay, they've had more creative use of it, but I don't think it's been used better than it was here, which is pretty impressive. The combat in the game. This is easily probably the hardest combat in any of the 3 games. Xenoblade 1 had like a good balance between having to put a lot of strategy and have a lot of technical skill when it comes to the fighting, and Xenoblade 2 shifted it more towards skill rather than strategy, but there's still a lot of like strategy that goes into your build and stuff like that, but it put a bigger emphasis on like remembering your combo routes and stuff like that, which is, I like that more than Xenoblade 1 personally, but that's just interesting how they changed it. This one definitely leans in the other direction, where I feel like 90% of the fight is actually done in the menus, where you're deciding how you're going to do the fight and strategizing, which was interesting, but I don't think that's my preference. Like, I think this is probably my least favorite battle system of the 3 games, and that's not to say that it's bad. I did actually like it, but it takes a lot longer to get the hang of, and it's just it's more complicated than the other 2, but I feel like the end product of that complexity is not as fun, unfortunately. So yeah. Your main character, which you control. By the way, this is the only Xenoblade game where you get a created character, and I'm going to talk about that later. But you can change your class, the class of your character, and I think that was an interesting system, having a completely different moveset depending on your class and having to level them up, and certain benefits to different classes and whatnot. That was cool. There wasn't as many area themes or battle themes as some of the other games, I think. Actually, you probably had more battle themes than Xenoblade 1, but I don't know the exact number. It felt like there was less music in the game overall, but the music that it did have was fantastic. Like, the area themes are amazing. Like Primordia, Oblivia, Noctilum, Sylvalum, Cauldros, all of those amazing themes. And like the unique monster theme, like the mini boss theme, Uncontrollable, oh my god, that is just amazing. That song, holy crap. I don't know if it's my favorite unique monster theme. The one from Xenoblade 2 is like the best song ever put into a video game, so it's kind of hard to compare to that. But yeah, the music is pretty incredible. There was only a few tracks that grated on me. Some of the music is really weird, and some people are really not going to be into it. But I like the fact that it used a lot more lyric tracks than the other games. I think Xenoblade 1 had 2, and Xenoblade 2 had 4, if I'm remembering correctly. But this game, like every other theme, has vocals, and I think that's really interesting. But yeah, the soundtrack was awesome. I don't think I liked it as much as the other 2 games, but that's like because it had less tracks for the most part. I think if it was bigger, it'd be up there. It's good. The side quests in this game, I'll talk more about the side quests later on in the cons, because there are a lot of cons. But the side quests, for the most part, like subject-wise, were really interesting. There was a lot of really dark themes in them. Like, there's one where a guy's like trying to, I can't even get into it. There's so many that are just like fucked up, and I kind of like that, and I liked that, honestly. Like, there's one where a guy is he's like trying to train a wild animal, but then you're like, oh, that's cool. He's trying to train the monsters on this planet to be nice and whatnot. But then like later on, you find out he's using it to like massacre people, and it's like, oh my god, maybe I shouldn't have helped this guy. So you beat him up and blah blah blah, whatever. But like, there's just a lot of, like, there's one where, like, people are getting murdered, and, like, there's so much murder in this game. I can't get into all, like, the dark shit, but just know, like, it gets, like, grim, some of these side quests, and I kind of like that. Not that the other games didn't do this, but this game, it felt really prevalent, and I was like, holy shit. I don't think there's, like, a single side quest in this game where someone doesn't die, which is pretty crazy. The way you progress in the game being non-linear, being in that it's an open world game, was really interesting, and I liked that. I think I overall prefer the linear structure, but the way they handled it here is incredibly well. Having you progress in the game by having a certain level of exploration felt like a really engaging way to progress the plot. So I really liked that. And depending on which, so like in the game, like I said, you're working to like situate the human race on this planet, and the beginning of the game, you get to choose a division, which is basically like what your job is, and you can change it, but like it's not really beneficial to. But like your job, like I think this is correct. Your job is what determines how you progress in the game. So my division that I chose was the Pathfinders. So progression for me was based on how much of each of the 5 landmasses in the game that I explored. So it's like, okay, so to progress the plot here, you have to have 30% of Noctilum explored. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, usually I don't like it when you're forced to explore, even though I'm the kind of guy who will do it anyway. But I thought that was a really interesting way to not like lock off areas behind stuff. The fact that you can go anywhere from the get-go is pretty cool, as open world games are, I guess. This is the team that later went on to make Breath of the Wild, so you can definitely see a lot of the philosophy from this game brought over to that one, which is cool. I think this game's, some of the trappings this game has went on to be improved in Breath of the Wild, which is really neat, but that's a whole other story. And kind of getting into that, the premise I thought was really interesting, of like having to survive and situate yourself on this new planet. Like everything is unknown. Like in the previous 2 games, there is a sense of unknown, especially in the first one, where like a lot of the areas is like no civilization whatsoever, and it feels like an open wild place. But like this game really does. Like it has the downfalls, and I'll talk about that later, but like what it gets out of this premise is really interesting, and I enjoyed it a lot. Like you really feel like this is like an unknown land, and I think I'm talking about the brutal and kind of grim side quest, and I think that goes along with it, like really showing that it's not easy for them to go through this. So yeah, I thought the premise was done pretty well, and like the overall lore was good, even if the main story kind of fell behind, and again, I'll talk about that later. I'm saving the cons for later. This game has a really big focus on mechs, which is both a good thing and a bad thing, but I think overall it was a net positive, because man, piloting the mechs is fucking cool. Man, when you first get it, amazing. This game had, I forget who it is, but someone who was working on this game was also involved in the Gundam series, and like you can like really tell, because it seems they really had like a passion for mechas stuff, because there's a lot of references to stuff, and like the Xeno series as a whole has mechas as a theme in almost every game that I can think of. The first game, Xenogears, has the gears obviously, and then I know there's mechs in Xenosaga. Then Xenoblade 1 has the faced mech on, and then the artifices in the second game, and so on and so forth. But it has the most, I think it has the most focus here, and that was a good thing. Another thing every Xenoblade game has is a character named Van Damme, and the Van Damme in this game is a really cool character. One of the few central characters that I actually found really interesting. Not like super interesting, but like he was entertaining to see, and you always liked seeing him. He's just a cool guy. I don't really have a whole lot to say about that, just the fact they're good at making the Van Dams in these games really awesome characters, and I think it's because someone on the team is a fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme, and the fact that they decide to make a character named that in every game is cool, and the fact that they make him a really cool guy. Anyway, I should move on. The characters as a whole were pretty good, but I don't think a lot of them like stack up to what the first and second game did. The first and second game, I mean like Xenoblade 1 and 2. I know that this is technically the second game and that's confusing, but like when I say 1 and 2, that's what I mean. So there's a lot of characters in this game, and I feel like so many of them just don't get off the ground, but the ones that do are pretty interesting. I liked Elma a lot. I like Van Damme, as I just said. I like Lau. Lynn, I didn't really like at first at all, but she kind of grew on me a little bit. She's not terrible. But like, there's not that many notable characters. There's a lot of side characters. There's like 24 playable characters. A lot of which get a lot of screen time, which I did like, but a lot of it is optional, and they barely do anything in the main story. You see them in like 2 cutscenes, but it was interesting. I like Hector and Yelv and Hope and Maya and Celica. There's a ton that I actually do like. But the fact that only there's 8 like central characters in the game, and I feel like most of those 8 aren't very interesting. So like we have Elma, who I said I liked, and Lynn, who's cool, and Lau, who is also neat. But then there's like L, and I like L. He's like goofy and whatnot, but so you kind of get tired of hearing him after a while. Then there's Doug, and I don't really like Doug at all. Like, he doesn't do like jack shit, and he's just like, he's kind of an asshole. I don't really like him. And then there's Irina, who is like a really stuck-up kind of bitchy character, and like, she's alright. She's friends with her stuff she has with Elma is cool, but when she's on her own, it's like, not really into it. Then her friend Gwyn, he's kind of goofy as well, but I feel like Elle kind of feels that better, him being a weird alien, and Gwyn's just kind of a guy. He's not super interesting. Who am I forgetting? I don't think I'm forgetting anyone. I think that's all of the main 8. I mean, excluding like your main character, which isn't really a character, it's kind of like yourself, so. Let's see what else we got. Running. So, this game has a running feature, which sounds weird that the other games don't have that, but in this game you can run, right? By tapping on the stick. And man, that increases, that like helps the pace of the game a lot. And I don't think this game's pacing is great, and I'll talk about that later. But just like the flow of the gameplay is made so much better by the ability to run, and I have no idea why it didn't come back in Xenoblade 2, because it was great. And it's like, you don't run slow in Xenoblade 2, the opposite really. You run pretty fast, and that's great, but the ability to run, I think, would be great. Like, even if that was like a late game addition, that would be cool, right? I don't know why they didn't bring that back. The general mobility in this game is really great, you know? I want this to come back in future games. I want them to bring back this kind of mobility in future games. It looks kind of ridiculous having your characters run super duper fast and like jump like 50 feet in the air, but it's fun, so who gives a shit? There is a lore reason behind that, actually, which I'll get into later. I put load times in my pros, but actually I'm going to save that because I kind of changed my opinion on that. So the game has a lot of MMO elements, and they're cool. They don't really interfere with the immersion of the game too much, which is great. But like, and they are kind of cool. Like, getting to see other people's created characters as just NPCs. That's neat, right? But like, I feel like there was such a missed opportunity to be able to actually play with your friends. Like, I don't have any friends who played this game, so I wouldn't be able to enjoy it regardless. But if I did play this game during my prime, I fucking know that I would have loved to play with my friends, and you can't do that, which is baffling. Like, it has so many MMO elements, but it's like, nah, you can't play with your friends. The best part of an MMO is absent, and that's weird. but the elements that they did put in were interesting, I guess. Going off of that, the custom character, I think that was a great addition. A lot of people don't like custom characters because like they think it breaks the immersion. You're like, oh, why the fuck? I don't want, like, it's weird to have my created character who doesn't say anything just kind of be there. But I don't know. I like tabletop games and like games like Skyrim and whatnot, where you get to like create a character to be in the world. That is super fun. Like, honestly, one of my favorite parts of this game is getting to be a character and kind of role playing as them, like making decisions based on what I think my character would do, or dressing them how I think they would dress, and blah blah blah. It was really fun making a created character, and I enjoyed playing as them, and it's the reason why I think like 95% of my playtime was on my created character, not just because that is like optimal combat wise, but also because they're just cool and I liked them, right? The atmosphere is pretty fucking crazy in this game. Like, the areas feel so like dense. Like, it actually feels like you're on a weird alien planet, and it's just, I can't really talk too much in depth about that because I'm not good at it, but like, damn. If the areas are like thick with atmosphere, and that feels really cool, right? The weapon switching, like the guns, were an interesting addition to combat. Mainly in Xenoblade games, you hold one weapon and that's it. I guess with the exception of Xenoblade 2, I guess that makes that different, but you know what I mean. You can on the fly switch between a gun and a sword, or a melee weapon. Actually, they're not all guns either, so I don't know what I'm saying. But you can switch between a ranged and a melee attack, and I think that's cool, like balancing when you should be in melee and when you should be in gun. And it affects what kind of attacks you can currently do. I guess that's similar to Xenoblade 2, but less in depth. But that's cool. Overdrive. So each game has like a different thing you can do with your like party meter. Usually, the Xenoblade games usually have a couple meters. Like in Xenoblade 1, you have your what am I thinking? You have your talent meter and you have your party meter, and then in Xenoblade 2 you have party meter and you have your super meter. This game you have your tension points, like your tension meter and your morale meter, which makes it really different from the other games. This is the only one of the three that doesn't have a chain attack, which I thought was really weird. But I think it's kind of made up for by Overdrive because it's really cool. Like Overdrive, what it does is basically like, if you do proper like combos of your moves, then you can basically be in a mode where you're doing a ton of damage and you're faster and you're healing constantly and evading stuff, and it's hard to describe, but it's cool. And it's cool from a lore perspective, and I'll talk about that when I get into that. There's a lot of flexibility in the combat. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of different builds you can have. There's a lot of different classes you can be, and a lot of the like I said, most of the fighting is like figuring out how you're going to fight and not the fight itself. So naturally there are a ton of different strategies you can employ, but maybe it's because I'm not great at the game, and trust me when I say I fucking suck at this game. This might be the hardest of the three. I think it's easily the hardest of the three Xenoblade games, in my humble opinion. But like, I feel like there are not very many viable strategies. I feel like making an evasion build, like, there's a lot of niche strategies that work in those niche situations, but like, there aren't very many good general strategies. I feel like just making an evasion build or a overdrive build is basically your go-to, and not really much else seems appealing when those are so good. So I guess that's a minor downside, but I do like the fact that there is a lot of flexibility in what you can do. The party members feel kind of insignificant in this game. They like don't talk a lot. I mentioned earlier how a lot of the side characters do get a lot of like side presence, like they get a lot of side quests and stuff, which makes them like similar to the Xenoblade 2 Rare Blades. But I feel like the Rare Blades just had so much more going for them. And like I said, I do like some of the characters in this game. I do. But, man, some of them just get, like, when you're in the main story, they just do nothing. And it's fucking weird because you spend so much time with them, and then they just don't do anything. It's kind of unsatisfying compared to the other games where, like, there are very few. Like, Xenoblade 2 has, like, 15 unoptional party members, which gives them a lot of opportunity to do in the story. This game has 3. Like, 3, I think 3. Is that right? I might be wrong, I don't know. I think there are 3 non-optional party members in this game, which doesn't give them a lot to do. And one of those 3 characters is Lynn, and she's cool and all, but I don't think that she really works as one of the guaranteed, like, you must always have this characters. I really don't know why she was their pick for that, honestly. I feel like if they're gonna do that, they should have at least had four characters that you are, like, that are very story relevant, because, like, you have your Grady character, you have Alma, and you have Lynn, and then there are other, like, plot significant characters, like there's the main 8 that I mentioned earlier, but, like, even they don't get a lot of screen time, so it's like, I don't know. It feels like Van Damme is supposed to be the 4th, but, like, you don't get to play as him, which is unfortunate. Like I said, there's like 25 playable characters. Maybe at the end of the video, if I decide, like, I'm up to it, I'll do, like, a tier list of all of them. That might be fun. I like the Affinity Missions. They're an interesting way to get to know the side characters, as I just mentioned. I don't like how you're locked into doing them, which is weird. Like, Xenoblade 2 also had Affinity Missions with the rare blades, and I feel like it was handled a lot more smoothly. Like, if you get stuck on it, just do it later. But this one's like, if you're stuck on it, fuck you. You get to stay in it. And I know it's, like, to prevent you from removing a character from your party. I know it's to do that so you can't remove the character from your party, but you could just put a proxy that says you have to have the character in your party. It really wouldn't be that hard. Like, I'm glad they did refine these in Xenoblade 2, because I like them. Just, they have problems. But they were cool, overall. Oh my god, okay, so pretty late into the game, you get a module for your mech that lets it fly. And, oh my god, there is no feeling like getting this. Like, if you know what it felt like to get the Monado in Xenoblade 1, or what it felt like to get, like, let me think, I guess, like, getting Pyra in Xenoblade 2. But I think the Monado is a better example. Like, how much it was built up, the Monado, like, you felt super good when you got it. You felt like, oh my god, I'm using this. You know, it's crazy, right? This game kind of has that feeling, but with this, where it's like, when you get to fly, it's insane. Like, it's unreal. It's just, I don't know how to describe it. It's just really cool. Like, flying around is, like, really fun, and you get to see the areas from higher vantage point. It's really cool and whatnot. They do a lot with the fact that you're on an alien planet. They have a lot of different races. In this, the different Xenoblade games have, like, different explanations for why the Nopon exist, and in this one it's just that they are one of the many alien species, which means that they have a lot less focus on them, which I never really thought about this, but I kind of miss the Nopon. They're not really used in this game, which is unfortunate, because I think when they are used in this game, they're great, and they usually are. But there's a lot of other races that they use more extensively, and I think that was a fair trade-off. The first one are the Manon. They're like these little reptile guys who are really good with machines. They have really high-pitched, squeaky voices, and they're pretty cute. They were really interesting, and they have a pretty big role in the plot as well. Their ship, I didn't mention this when I was talking about the soundtrack, but the song that plays inside the Manon ship is so good, oh my god. Well, probably one of my favorite tracks in the game, honestly. Then you have the Orf, which are these bug-looking praying mantis guys, who like they're all governed, like they all have like a voice of God inside their head, and they all like follow this voice. Like they're individual, but they are their thoughts are like governed. Their thoughts and direction are governed by this thing. What do they call it? They call it the Ova. They're like, the Ova is guiding us to this blah blah blah. And part of a lot of their like, and they reproduce, like they're genderless things that like reproduce through, like you pour water on their dead body and then they divide into two. Like that's pretty interesting. A lot of the missions around them are about them developing like actual individuality after interacting with humans, which is, that was really cool. They're like, I don't understand, I'm straying from the Ova, this can't be happening. So that was cool. They were really cool. Although at first I didn't really like them because they're like, yeah, we all share the same opinions and we're all super smart and blah blah blah, right? And also there's the Prone, who at first you think are all super evil and they're part of the bad guys, right? But then you find out there's like different factions of them that are actually not terrible. Or not mostly terrible. There are some pretty terrible people in the not terrible clan, ironically. But like, later on you find there's a lot more nuance to like the Prone society. There's like a good side, like not like a good side and a bad side, but there's like two different like disagreeing sides of their entire race, which you get to see a lot of, and I think some of the missions that focus on that are super interesting. And like you get to see a lot of the Prone traditions, which is really cool. Like it makes you feel like these guys are a real society. And that was really neat. I think out of all of them, the Prone are probably my favorite because they get a lot of focus put on them, and they're neat. But there are a lot of the Prone are enemies, and that kind of transitions to my next point, which the enemies look pretty freaking cool in this game. There's some really weird designs, and I kind of like that because it makes you really like designs of the enemies in Xenoblade games are always weird, but this game they're super weird, and I think that if they're weird for Xenoblade standards, then they really succeeded in making them feel like alien, and they're cool. There's one enemy type that I really don't like though, and I forget what they're called. They look like foxes with big ears, and they like when they attack they make this fucking shrieking noise, which oh my god, it's so ear grating. I hate it. But other than that, enemies are cool. Enemies are neat. No falling damage. That is fantastic. That wouldn't work in a lot of the other Xenoblade games because they have linear progression, right? So they're trying to force you to not just jump down to a later area. I'm sure there's ways they could like avoid that otherwise, but it makes sense that there's fall damage in the other games. Like, it's not, you can fall from pretty high in the other games without it being a problem. So like it doesn't bother me that much, honestly. As much as fall damage does in most games, because I feel like fall damage for the most part is kind of shit. But not having it and the ability to freely explore without worrying about that is awesome. That can't be overstated. There's lots of post-game in this game. I didn't do a whole lot of it because I was kind of after 100 hours. I'll admit I was kind of burnt out from it, but there's a lot of post-game to do, and I'm looking forward to doing it at a certain point. I don't know when, so I can't really comment on what's in the post-game, but it seems like there's so much more that I haven't seen, even though I've played it for 100 hours, and that's a good feeling. Like, you get a lot of content out of it, for better or for worse, I think. And, speaking about worse, that's where my pros end. We're going to talk about my, actually, I'm going to check my notes. No, okay, that's not the end of the pros. I was wrong. Let me talk about that. Okay. For better or for worse, it doesn't rely on anything in Xenoblade 1. Like, doesn't take the setting, doesn't take any of the characters, doesn't take any of the settings, doesn't take any of the themes, takes barely any of the combat mechanics, like barely anything. It's crazy. And I think that's admirable, but also very risky, and it was kind of made this game a little rough in some areas, because you feel like it's not really building on Xenoblade 1, it's kind of just doing its own thing, which again, is admirable to try to do something new and different and not just backpedal off the original success. But I think that taking into account some of the things that worked in the first game would have benefited this one. But I don't know. I think it does feel really different from the other two, and that is something that I'll praise. I think it has a stronger central theme than the other games. Obviously, like, there are a lot less settlements of characters in this one, so you get a lot more of a central idea around. Earlier I was talking about the premise of like surviving, and that is basically the theme of almost every single side quest, and I think that really enforces the central theme of it, which was really cool. It makes you think that it's actually important. Like, I can't think of a really good overarching theme of the other two games, especially 2, but they did a good job with having variety in the different things that the people are thinking, but this one feels like there is like a central thing that's going on more than the other two, and I think that's interesting. Okay, now we're getting into the cons for real. It focuses a lot on your created character, which is cool because it gives your created character things to do, obviously, and you want that. But it kind of made some of the other party members feel like they didn't get enough screen time. So it feels like it's all about you, and like you're not. And like I applaud it for not going for the you are the chosen one, because I totally thought he was gonna do that, but it didn't. That was great. But that being said, I think it does put a lot, like, too much focus on your created character. So, in all the other Xenoblade games, you can keep all of your party members in reserve, and you can switch them out whenever you want, which is super convenient and super cool. But for some reason, this game decided to ditch that, and I have no idea why. If you remove a character from your team, they'll go back to their like hangout spot in the hub world, and like, oh my god, that's so annoying. Like, it really doesn't incentivize you to actually experiment with different characters, because you're like, oh, if I want to put, say, Hope on my team, I gotta walk all the way to the park, and since the pop-in in this game is so terrible, you might have to wait up to fucking 3 minutes just for her model to pop in so you can talk to her. Oh my god, you have no idea how frustrating that is. So yeah, I really wish you could just keep all your party members in reserve. In fact, there's a thing that where you can like put 4 your party members in a reserve, but like once you leave the menu, they go away. I have no idea why they decided to do this. The ability to keep even just 4 party members in reserve to swap and switch out would be insanely good, but they decided not to do that, and I have no clue why. Maybe it's because the characters' spawn positions can change between missions, but like, I wouldn't care if you forced them out of my party every now and then. Just let me keep some of them. It's stupid. Anyway, the mechs are cool, right? But repairing them is not cool. If they're destroyed out in the field, then they're just gone, and you have to go all the way back to the hub world to repair them, and if you don't have insurance for your Skell, then it's gone. You gotta pay for it again, which is super annoying, and will like grind through your money if you're not good at the game like me. There's nothing more frustrating than having your Skell destroyed, because it's like, oh shit, now I've lost mobility, I've lost combat power, I've lost a shit ton of stuff. Like, and then you gotta go all the way back and fix it, and then when you get back, it might just get broken again. Who fucking knows? This game is infamous for having super high level enemies everywhere that can just snipe you and kill you, and imagine how annoying that is if it destroys your Skell and you gotta go fix it. Like, damn, that's annoying. Skells are like basically required for a lot of the game, and that's fine, but it felt a little bit limiting. It's like, okay, here it's forcing me to use a Skell, and there's some parts where it forces you not to use a Skell, and it's like, sometimes I mentioned how the combat variety is interesting, but sometimes it feels like it doesn't want you to use it, which is annoying. Some parts it really felt like please use a Skell here, but it's like, I don't want to. The topple combo is gone. One of the most satisfying things in the other two games is getting a topple combo going, and it just doesn't exist in this game. which is a pretty minor thing. You can topple, but it doesn't lead into anything, and you don't need anything to get a topple, so it feels a lot less satisfying, unfortunately. That's just a minor point. One of the most annoying and cumbersome things in the entire game is that you can only change the time of day at the hub world. Why? Xenoblade 1 let you change the time at any time. Xenoblade 2 lets you change the time at any time. This game doesn't. I have no clue why it does this. And the worst part is that this game has the most time exclusive events. So you're constantly needing to just go back to your hub world and change the time. Or sometimes I just got too lazy and just fucking waited it out. And you shouldn't have to do that, because that's terrible. Doing combat in the Skell is pretty fun, I will admit, but it feels like there's a lot less strategy than on foot. It feels like a lot of the strategy when you're in the Skell boils down to just spamming arts as fast as you can, which, not a huge deal, but like, I already wasn't huge on the combat in this game, and the fact that it's dumbed down by this is a little bit annoying, that's all. This game has a really bad habit of doing this thing where it's like, go to this area to complete the side quest. But then it'll like randomly spawn like a huge level bajillion monster on top of you for no reason. Like even like super early in the game, especially early in the game, which is so annoying. Because it's like, I want to do this thing, but I gotta do it before your stupid big O enemy comes and kills me. That's super annoying. A lot of these cons kind of might sound like nitpicks, but honestly, they add up. The nitpicks add up, and I think that's the thing about this game, is that there are very few like fatal flaws, and like the pros of this game are strong, but there are a lot of cons, and we're not even halfway through. Gathering drops and items in this game is worse than any of the other games. One of the biggest problems I have with all of the Xenoblade games is collecting items. It is so boring, and it is so, like, you have no indication of where you find these items. It's incredibly annoying, because on the overworld they all look the same. Torna fixed this, sorta, which I liked, and I think going forward they should make that the standard. But yeah, collecting stuff in this game is super annoying. Especially because enemy drops feel like they're so rare compared to other games. So there's so much grind. Oh my god. Just in general, stuff takes so long to do. Just so long. Even though you can run and you can fly, you'd think that it would make things go more smoothly and more quickly, but you'd be wrong. Things go so slowly in this game. It's fucking ridiculous how slow some things are. The loading times are slow. The fights are sometimes slow as hell. Like, grinding is slow and monotonous. It just feels like it's stretched out, and that sucks. I feel like in my 100 hours of total playtime, I actually spent like half of that actually playing the game. And that sucks. You don't want that to happen. It just feels way too grindy for no reason at all. And I think that might be like the MMO influence in it, but just damn, that sucks, dude. A lot of the enemies, even though they vary a lot in design, which is cool, a lot of them feel like really samey, and they use the same enemy types a lot. I feel like 9 out of 10 side quests, the boss is just a guy in a mech suit. Like every time. And it's like, oh, I wonder who the boss of this is. Oh, I hope it's not a guy in a mech. Well, it's a guy in a mech. There you fucking go. And it's... every major boss in the game is like... are a mech. And it's like, I get that you're going for a mech aesthetic in this game, but there are too many of them, man. It's getting to the point where it's getting predictable and it's getting boring. Like, there's just too many. There's too many mechs. That's what I'm gonna say it. Some of the side quests are so tedious. Like, you have no idea. It is crazy how tedious some of these ones are. And a lot of them are like this, but I'm gonna talk about the worst example, just as an example. There's a quest where a guy is like, I need you to go beat up some bugs. Like, they're reproducing too fast, and I don't know why. I want you to beat them up so you can gather some field data for me, right? So, you go there. and you beat up a couple bugs. You come back. The guy says, I still can't figure out why they're multiplying so fast. Can you go back and collect more data? So you go all the way back, kill a few more bugs, and you come back. The guy says, I still don't know why they're reproducing, and I have not gotten any progress. So I invited this orph to help me. And he says, hello, I'm an orph, and I'm here to help with this research. Can you please go kill more bugs for field testing? So you go all the way back, and you kill more bugs. And every time you go back, there's more bugs. And you come back, and you ask them, okay, has the both of you managed to dig up what the fuck's going on with these bugs? Why are they reproducing so fast? And they're like, we don't know. Can you go please get more data on the bugs? So you go back, and you beat up more bugs. And when you come back for the last time, do you know what they say? They say, we don't know why the bugs are reproducing. Thank you for your help. And it ends. That is the most annoying, tedious, and unsatisfying side quest I have ever seen in my life. Why did they make that way? I really don't know why. They could have just said go there and kill 20 bugs and get it all done over with at once. Even 2 trips would have been fine. But fucking 5 trips where you do the same thing every time and you come back to hear the same thing, and at the end they're like, yeah, we didn't learn anything. Here's your reward, bye. Like, oh my god. I can't get over how bad that one is. And there's a lot of them that are like that. Not as egregious. That was probably the worst one, but there are ones that are like that, and oh my god, it's annoying. So, there's this thing you get really early in the game called the follow ball, and I kind of forgot that it existed for a while, but it is super useless. The maps in this game aren't spectacular, and the directions of the side quests aren't great either. So this is a way to kind of circumvent the fact that the maps are a lot bigger, so it's a lot harder to direct you, right? It doesn't work very well. In very niche situations, it's useful, but a lot of the time, basically what it does is it like draws a trail to where you're supposed to go, but it doesn't work a lot of the time. A lot of the time, it straight up is wrong and tells you to go to the wrong place. And sometimes it just doesn't work at all. It'll go in the opposite direction of where the actual objective is and just has no clue what it's doing. It's very unreliable. So it's useful in very niche scenarios where you need to know like a direction, but other than that, completely useless. I feel like this game... I'm going to ignore that fact. Where's my phone? I have more notes on my phone. I have too many notes. Too many notes, dude. How long have I've been talking for almost 50 minutes? It doesn't feel like that, but... oh boy. Okay. The gathering information objectives and side quests are annoying. It's basically like, here's a huge area. Somewhere in it, you can find someone with information. We're not going to tell you anywhere where they are. And it usually just results in you running around for 10 minutes until you find them, which is super boring and not interesting, and that just sucks, dude. That's that. In the other Xenoblade games, the party members aren't terribly useful. In fact, some of them, their AI is so bad that it's not worth even having them to begin with. But in this game, they feel even worse. Like, they don't do anything. Like, they die so easily. I feel like most of the major fights in this game, I fought by myself. I feel like almost all... Like, there are 12 chapters, which means like 12 major boss fights, roughly. There are more than that, but you know what, I'll just round it out. So basically, say that, like, I think 12 of those... out of those theoretical 12 boss fights, I think that 10 of them I fought by myself, essentially, because my party members died instantly. Which is so annoying. I probably could have gave them better builds, so it might be on me, but I feel like they're just so incompetent. The boss fights are really challenging, but I don't feel like they're challenging in a very compelling way like the bosses are in Xenoblade 1 or 2. They kind of just feel like make yourself as OP as possible. Like, they feel like the solution to them is very rigid. It's like there's always like a one do all solution for them, which, like I said earlier, like there's a lot of build variety, but not a lot you can do with those builds because the game demands you to use these optimal builds that work better. So like an infamous fight late in the game is versus a guy named Gajarg, which I'll talk about later. And he He has this giant mech, and fighting it on foot sucks. So it's basically just like, use a skell, please. So you use a skell, and that's basically the answer to the boss. If you have a skell, easy as fuck. Like, there's really nothing. And like, even to that, if you want to make interesting builds that actually work, you gotta put in a lot of work, and that means grinding, and that means a lot of grinding. Like, oh my god. Ugh, Jesus, the grinding. It's so much, and it's unbearable. I tell you, it's unbearable. I'm gonna run out of disk space with all that I'm ranting right now. I'm gonna try to speed it up, but it's gonna be hard. So, okay. The main villain of this game. We're gonna starting to get into story stuff, and oh boy. The main villain of this game, Commander Luxar, is awful. When I think of the Xenoblade villains, I think of these awesome characters. I think of Egil, I think of Zanza, I think of Malthus and Malos, these incredibly intimidating and compelling villains to the story. And Luxar is just nothing. He's just a grumbling idiot who's like, why are my subjects not doing as I say? I fucking hate all of them and they suck. And it's like, oh my god. It's so annoying listening to him babble about nonsense, and he's so high and mighty in himself, even though you never see him do anything in the game. The main characters never interact with him at all until the final chapter, where they're like, oh, you're Luxar? Time to die. He's so bad. Like, he's not like aggressively bad. Well, I mean, I guess he kind of is. Like, he's not super bad. Like, when he's on screen, you're not like groaning. But like, he's just so poor, like, compared to what came before and what became after. I just wonder what the fuck they were thinking. His design is repulsive. His voice is annoying. He doesn't do anything compelling in the story. It's just, he is such a nothing, useless character that I hate seeing. The camera, for the most part, is pretty good. It takes some settings in the settings menu to make it not terrible, actually, at the beginning. So I was actually fearing that it was terrible, but I was like, okay, I fixed it, it's not bad. But when you're inside buildings, oh my god, I don't think I've ever felt a worse camera in a game than the indoor camera in this game. Oh my god, I could not find a worse camera. It's so unresponsive and janky, and it just sucks, man. The bosses, I talked about the bosses earlier, but they're so samey. They're all mechs. Like, almost all of them are just mechs. And they don't feel impactful at all. They don't have, like, the story impact or the character impact or, like, the anything impact that the bosses have in the first and second games. They don't feel like anything. They just feel like roadblocks that you kind of fucking gotta kill. And that's it. They're not very compelling at all. It's just so boring. I did not enjoy the bosses at all. I don't think there's a single boss in this game that I genuinely enjoyed. Except maybe the first phase with Gajarg, where he's out of his mech. That was pretty fun. Had some cool atmosphere and stuff. Actually, pretty interesting part of the story, which is rare. But other than that, I can't remember a single boss fight that I legitimately enjoyed, which sucks. It really sucks, because I think the Xenoblade bosses are very strong overall in the history of the series. So, like, the fact that they're so shit here, it's kind of unfortunate. The fast travel is pretty good, like I mentioned with the gamepad, but, like, the amount of load times you have to sit through from going back and forth from these side quests that are so repetitive and shit, it's mind-numbing. Like, in the long run, I feel like I spent so much time in loading screens, like, just wasting my time. It's fucking ridiculous. And they could have fixed this. They could have done something about this. Monolith does their best to make loading times reasonable, and they usually do. In Xenoblade 1 and 2, loading times aren't bad. Loading times aren't even that bad in this game, honestly. It's the fact that there's so many of them. It's not a matter of how long they are individually. There's just so many... Right before the final battle, and I'll talk about this more in depth later, but if you want to attempt the final battle, you have to go through, I think, about 10 cutscenes, if I'm remembering that right. And you can skip the cutscenes, but you have to wait for each individual one to load, and I timed it, and it's about 7 minutes of loading time. Let me repeat that. 7 minutes of loading. It is unbearable. And you can't just leave it to load either, because every now and then you have to press the plus button to skip the cutscene. With the cutscenes, this takes like an hour. It's fucking ridiculous. I despise this. Oh my god. Okay, more lore stuff. So, midway through the game, you learn that you're not actually like a human. You are a cyborg, not like a cyborg. You're an android who is piloted by a person. And the main plot of the game, the main driving force, is that you need to find the cryo chamber that your real bodies are held in before it runs out of power and your bodies like rot and die, which would obviously be bad. So that's a pretty good incentive for the game. But these androids, which are called the Mimiosomes, or the MIMS for short, have so many lore inconsistencies that it's ridiculous, and it makes you question so many things. Like, the Mimiosomes can eat food and they can taste food, right? Makes sense? No. It really doesn't. They explain this by saying, like, oh, we wanted to not go insane by feeling like we're human. And it's like, okay, that kind of makes sense. But, like, this is food that you could be saving for when your real bodies are here. And it's like, oh, but what if it went bad? You might as well use it, right? No. And, like, it's implied that the Mimiosomes need to eat food as well, which, why would you do that? I get, like, wanting to eat as a leisure activity, but why would you need to do it? That's ridiculous. And then they also need sleep. You could argue this is to charge them? That would make sense, but they're never at some kind of charging station. Like, what is that all about? Why do they need to do that? And, like, they can also disable them feeling pain. Why would you not do that on a regular basis when you're in combat? Why? And they talk about stuff like, there's a lot of stuff that implies that they do have, like, reproductive parts. But why? There's a character who, like, offhandedly mentions having sex, so I guess that's it. But, like, why? Why would you do that? That also implies that they have digestion, which is gross. But just, oh my god. I like this as a concept, and I like it as the driving force of the plot, honestly. But there's just so many problems with it that I don't understand. It's like, why would you do this? There's so much I want to go into about how this makes more sense, but I think you're getting the idea, and I've been rambling for a while, like almost an hour, so I'll just keep going. Okay, enemy detection. In most Xenoblade games, when you get close to an enemy, or you make too much noise, or you do other stuff like use ether attacks, an enemy will notice you. And usually if you don't want to fight an enemy, you can just run away from it, right? Makes sense. There's a meme in the first game where it's like running is a valid tactic, and it is. If you don't want to fight enemies, you don't have to, and it saves a lot of time. In this game, that's not really an option. There's a reason it doesn't even tell you that you can run from fights in this game. To compensate from the fact that you have a mech that can travel super fast, and you also have the ability to run, which you don't in any other Xenoblade game, they compensate this by having the enemies have incsanely large detection radiuses and being incredibly fast and incredibly, like, incredibly, they're like hell-bent on trying to get to you. So if you see an enemy, you're going to have to be running for a while before they get off your ass, which makes exploring in this exploration-heavy game honestly kind of cumbersome, and that's bad. That's really bad. You don't want that to happen. You don't want exploration to be de-incentivized like that. And I know why they do this. Like, it makes sense. Like, you're on an alien planet, you have to feel threatened by these things. But why did you have to make it so obnoxious? I don't understand why they had to do that. Okay, stuff feels kind of unorganized in this game in general. The menus are kind of a mess. The augments, like, it just feels like there's too much shit, honestly. Like, you gotta upgrade your weapons, you gotta upgrade your skill, you gotta upgrade your skill weapons, you gotta upgrade your armor, you gotta upgrade your skill armor, you gotta pay the companies so that you can get a share in their company so that they let you buy better weapons. You have to craft attributes for your weapons and put them on your weapons. You have to add more attribute slots to your weapons. There's just too much shit, and I think it doesn't boil down to being more interesting. I think it boils down to just being more annoying. Like, it just felt like too much to keep track of. A lot of people tell me that there's too much to keep track of in the other games, and I get that. Like in Xenoblade 1, you gotta do your arts, you gotta do your affinity links, you gotta do all that crap. You gotta do the armor and whatnot. In Xenoblade 2, there's a lot more. You gotta do your affinity charts, you gotta do your armor, you gotta do your blade armor, you gotta do your ox cores, you gotta do your blade loadouts, and there's just a lot of stuff to keep track of. But I feel like in Xenoblade 2, every single little thing is important. And in this game, it does not feel that way. It feels like some of this stuff doesn't matter at all, and you're just wasting your time by even spending your time on it, which is, oh my god. It's overwhelming with stuff you want to do. But then, when you actually are using it, it's not really that interesting, honestly. It's just, oh my god. It's, oh my god. There's just too much shit. There's too much shit. That's all. There's too much shit. Okay. I remember I just wrote plot holes, but honestly, I don't remember a lot of them. I remember, there are plot holes, like, why the fuck did this happen? But I'm trying to think of what they actually are. I wrote this a while ago. Let me try to remember what the plot holes are. Because I know they do exist. Like, there's a lot of ones like, oh, this guy, I'm so sad he died, but it's like, he didn't really die. The whole part of the plot is that he's in cryo somewhere. Why are you so sad that he died? And then some characters aren't concerned about it at all. They're like, oh, he's not dead, we can bring him back. But then other characters are like, oh my god, he's fucking dead. But it's like, they have no reason to be concerned about that, really. It's dumb. It's really dumb. That's the only one I can really think of. But there are a lot of plot holes, trust me. I'll talk a little bit more about the plot later. There's only really one settlement, which is the new LA, like the hub. And it's a pretty good hub, to its credit. It's big, it's got pretty good variety, but what, like, just makes the rest of the world lack things. There are a few small settlements. Like, there's some enemy camps, but those aren't really kind of settlements. Like, think of the first two games. Like, think of Colony 6, Frontier Village. Second game, like, think like Tantal, like Theoswar. Tantal. What's the one in Torgoth Gormott, right? Those are like real settlements that have shops and they have NPCs and all that. This game doesn't have many of those. There's one in Kaldros. There's like a little Nopon, like prop up settlement, right? That you can buy stuff from. I think, I don't fucking remember. There's like a couple really small Nopon settlements, but that's it. And I get why they do that. I get it. It's an alien planet. But like, you see so many of these aliens, but like, where are their settlements? I feel like this is something that was cut, honestly. I feel like there should have been like friendly settlements. Feel like there should have been more. Like where like L. What is L? Like, he's a weird blue alien, and I was waiting for the entire game, like, okay, at some point he's got to, like, introduce us to his people, but, he never does. He never says what he is. He's not part of any other races that are established. And you never get to see his, like, settlements. You're like, where the fuck are you from? Where are you from? It's stupid. I wish there was more of that, because honestly, getting to new towns in some of the Xenoblade games, especially 2, is super interesting. Like, getting to Alba Cavendish in Moradane is super interesting, but they couldn't do that in this one because there's no settlements. There's only New LA, which they do put a lot of work into New LA. You spend a lot of time there, so they put a lot of work into making it good, but I just wish there was more. I'm gonna move on because I'm talking for too long. I feel like a lot of the time in this game it feels like there's too much to do rather than feeling like there's a lot of content. Like in Xenoblade 2, I constantly feel like there's a lot of shit to do, but like in a good way. Like I have a lot to do in this game, there's a lot of content, but in Xenoblade X it's like, I have so much to do. It's like, it feels like it's bloated rather than full, you know what I mean? It feels like it's bloated with too much shit rather than being healthily saturated with a lot of content, which I feel is unfortunate, because there is a lot of good content in here. Just a lot of it feels like padding, and it sucks. Kind of a minor thing. Dialogue trees are interesting for your created character. You kind of have to have those, or else you kind of feel like there's no individuality, right? But a lot of them kind of force you to be an asshole, which I feel like is dumb, because if you want to roleplay, what if your character isn't an asshole? You can't be one. I mean, you gotta be one sometimes, which is annoying. Not a huge problem, though. I said that there's a good... Actually, real quick, I'm gonna save my progress. What am I trying to say? I saved the progress on my recording, so we're back at it with more rambling. Okay, let's see what we can talk about. There are some really bad characters in this game, like ones that are so insufferable that I just, ooh, I don't like them, and they're just, you hate to see them around. One of them I'm trying to think of is Murderess. That's a cool name, and when I heard of her name, I was like, Murderess. Ooh, that sounds interesting. Maybe we'll talk to, maybe we'll figure out more about her. That'll be cool, right? So I did her side quest, and it turns out that she's just Irina's evil twin sister, who's like a huge asshole who nobody likes. At the end of her quest, she's like, yeah, I lured you here so I could kill you, and then she fails to kill you, and then like she just fucks off, and, like pretends that she did your job. And then she claims the reward for that job. And then she's like, yeah, let's be friends. I'm now part of your party. And it's like, fuck off. It's like, she's such an asshole. And it's like, I hate her. I'm trying to think of other ones. There's some insufferably bad characters in this game. Luxar was one of them, but I mentioned him specifically. And there's a couple others that I'll mention specifically. But man, there are bad characters. Bad characters. Some of them just suck. I don't like seeing them ever. Being able to accept quests of any difficulty sounds interesting, but there are so many quests that are like beyond your ability to do that you can just grab, and that's dumb. That's all. That's not a huge complaint. The side quests are annoying, right? For a lot of the time. A lot of them are good, trust me. I'm talking a lot of shit on them, but there are some really good side quests. But the thing about them is they almost never have good rewards. Some of them do. Some of them reward you some pretty cool cosmetics, and in a game where you have a really customizable character, having cosmetics is actually a cool reward. In most games, I don't think cosmetics are a great reward, but in this game, they actually kind of are, right? But most of the rewards you get are stuff like, here's some experience, or here's some money. And like the worst of all is sometimes it'll give you these figurines that you can put in your base, which that's lame as hell. The fact that the base is customizable to begin with is kind of just an afterthought. Like, it doesn't feel customizable enough to be worth your time, but also it just constantly tells you, hey, did you know you can customize your base with all this cool stuff that we're giving you as rewards? That it's like, I just wish I had a more substantial reward for doing this. Like, give me armor, give me a cosmetic, anything. That's not this. It's annoying. Okay, going back to my bad characters, because I just remembered this. Bose. Whew! He is bad. Oh my lord. You can't even get me started on this. Bose is a horrible character. So he's like, I was looking for people who can help me in my quest. You can call me Sensei. And you're like, no, I don't think I'll do that. And he's like, oh, you will. And it's like, okay, I already don't like this guy, but sure, do what you want. And then you start going on a mission with him, and he's like, and there's a man who's hurt on the ground. And it's like, oh, he's like, oh god, please help me, I'm dying. And he's like, no, I fucking hate aliens a lot, and you are not worth saving. You're better off dying here. It's like, oh my god. And you can convince him to help. You have to convince him to help this guy who's dying. And it's like, okay, so you're a racist now? That's just fantastic. It's like, and it only gets worse from here. As if he wasn't like a demanding, like, bald idiot and also racist. It gets worse. Like, what does he do later on? Like, you find his student, which was the point of the mission, right? And he's like, you fucking idiot. You got your teammates killed and I hate you. You're so bad at what you do. And you are the worst. And you suck. And like, and he runs off like crying basically. He's like, yes, Sensei, you're so wise and so shit. And like, and he's like, that's how you whip him into shape. That's how you do it, right? Yeah, I'm super cool. Call me sensei. And you're like, no, dude, what the hell? And he's like, one day you'll understand that this is how you do it. And it's like, no, we were just being mean to him. His best friend just died, and you were like, it's all your fault. Oh my god, I hate this guy. And then you get back to the base, right? You get back to your barracks, and he's like, well, you were good at what you did. I think you'll be my new Padawan, my new apprentice. And you're like, and you can, one of the dialogue options that I obviously chose was, nah, I'm good. But he's like, too bad, I already made up my mind. And at this point, this guy had pissed me off so much. I never added him to my party ever again. I stripped him of all of his good armor and stuff that he came pre-equipped with, and just left him naked on the street. I'm not even joking about that. He's the worst character, and I had no shame in doing that. Kind of going off of that, I feel like too many of the side quests are based on alien racism, and it's just the same thing over and over again. It's like, I hate these aliens. Brah, what am I gonna do about it? And then you convince them that aliens aren't so bad, and then it ends that way. I feel like there's like at least a dozen side quests with that exact plot, and it felt kind of repetitive. Okay, now we're gonna talk about Tatsu. Okay, so when I went into this game, I already knew that a lot of people didn't like Tatsu, and I knew some of the reasons why. And I was prepared for the worst, and somehow I was impressed by how bad he was. One of the main points of contention against Tatsu is that he's involved in a running gag in the game where Lin wants to eat him, like cook him in a stew, like jokingly. This joke is used, like I kid you not, like hundreds of times. And I'm so done with it. It's like, I get it. You want to eat him. That's so funny. That's so funny. That's so funny, haha. I can't believe you put that joke in the game so many times. It's so funny. But like, oh my god. After a while, I wanted him to shut up so bad. And like, just generally, he's so like pompous and mighty about himself, but has nothing to back it up by. Like, he's technically the main Nopon of this game, even though he's not playable. But like, let's think about the other two Nopon, right? Ricky and Tora. Ricky talks like big shit. He's like, I'm the epicus, right? But he actually backs it up by being a powerful playable character and like actually like holding some morals. And he's not like, he jokingly like refers to his friends as his sidekicks and blah blah blah, but it's like endearing because he's actually like a tough guy and you wouldn't expect that. So like his like pompous like bragging about how epic he is, it comes off as more charming than anything else, honestly. And I don't really know how to explain why. He's just cool. He's Ricky, right? Everyone likes him. And then Tora is kind of a similar case where like he's kind of pompous about himself, but like he's also like a super genius. So like you got to give him some credit, right? And Tora's awesome. But then there's Tatsu. Tatsu doesn't do jack shit, and he's like even more pompous about himself. Like he's like, oh, this is my team. This isn't Elma's team. This is my team. This is Team Tatsu, and I'm super epic and awesome. And it's like, he doesn't do anything ever. A couple times he does something useful, like, oh, you can go to this place and they do this. That's kind of useful. There's a couple times in the plot where he's useful, but like, I don't know why they keep him around. There's literally no reason why they keep him around. He barely does anything. I think the worst, like the critical mass of me thinking that he was annoying. And like, actually, no, before I go into that, he's not the worst. I liked his voice, and I think I actually like his design a lot. And there are times where he's actually cool. Like, he's actually like a cute, funny character some of the time. But that's some of the time, compared to most of the time. I think one of the worst aspect is midway through the game, when you beat like a really hard boss, and Tatsu's like, yeah, we fucking did it, man. And he's jumping around and happy, and then like, it's like, Tatsu, no, you idiot, they're not dead yet. So they fire a shot at him, which causes you to have to take a bullet for him, and you almost die. It's like, oh my god, Tatsu, why would you do that? Okay, I'm done talking about Tatsu. A lot of the side quests are like really similar in structure, which kind of gets repetitive. It's like, something is going on. Go to a place. This thing is not exactly as we thought it was going. Who could have figured that out? and then at the end you fight a boss. It's like, that's basically the structure of every single one. And that's a little bit repetitive. But putting that aside, I want to talk about probably the most involved storyline of side quests, like a side story in the game, and that's the Alex storyline. So I talked about how a lot of the side quests are based on alien racism, and this is like the peak, the critical mass of alien racism. So this guy starts up like a seminar, right? And he's like, I want the aliens to come to my seminar where I teach them about Earth customs so they can understand it more, right? So he trusts you to go find some that are interested in learning about human customs. So you go and find them, round them up, send them to a seminar. Then you show up to this seminar because you're curious about what's going on, and like you see him just about to start executing all of these aliens, and you're like, holy shit. So obviously you beat him up and he escapes. So you think I was like, okay, they'll probably do something about him later because he would have died if this is the end of the storyline. So like there's another storyline where there's a woman who's doing like a speech about the relations between aliens and humans, how they're getting along and whatnot. And she gets fucking sniped by someone. And you're like, they're like, oh, we think the person who did it was part of Alex's new gang of people who are trying to wipe out all of the aliens. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess this is progressing. So you go and find out more about like Alex's weird anti-alien racism. I got anti-racism. His weird racism cult. And then like, it's like, okay, this is a thing now. So like and then like in the latest storyline, we're like, we found Alex's location and we want you to take him out for good. So you go beat the shit out of him, right? You find him. And he's like, I can't believe this. I can't believe my racism isn't strong enough to stop you. It's like, okay, dude, just shut up. So, there's a couple others in the storyline. I don't remember exactly what happens. Basically, it's just like you finding more information about his cult and what's going on. There's a lot of death. But then it finally cultivates with you finding his like base where he has a shit ton of his followers. And then you go there and beat them all up. And then it's just him left and his like second in command, who's like a shapeshifter woman, right? And like after you beat them up, the woman's like, oh my god, my leg's broken, I'm in so much pain, oh my god. And he's like, he gets so tired of her complaining that he shoots her in the face. I'm not even joking about that. He shoots her in the face. And then like he's on his like last legs, like he's dying, right? Because you just beat the shit out of him like super hard, because there's like no redeeming him at this point. He sniped a woman. He's tried to start like a weird euthanasia cult, and it's bad. So you're like, so you beat the shit out of him, basically trying to kill him. And he's like, before I die, I want you to know one thing. Just because you won doesn't make you right. I know the aliens are bad, and I hate them. And then he like shoots himself and dies. What in the fuck? That pissed me off so much. That was such an anticlimactic end to that storyline. And it's like, what the fuck does he mean by that? Just because you won, you're not right? Like, sorry dude that your weird racism cult didn't work. He didn't even like back up himself with anything. He didn't say like, he's like, oh, the aliens are secretly plotting to kill us. But it's like, do you have any evidence for that? And he's like, no. Of course not. So that's that. I'm gonna stop talking about that. Okay, so now we're talking about the main plot a little bit more. So, they hype up the villains to be like super scary and stuff, right? They're like, oh, these are the intimidating new villains that you're gonna have to deal with soon. But then you fight them and they're like complete chumps. Like they don't, like they're so bad. Like they're so incompetent. And it makes you think, why did they hype these guys up so much if they're just like low-level jobbers? And like, it's like there's so many villains in the game. Like, I mean, not so many, but like every now and then you'll get introduced to a new subset of villains. First there's like the Prone, the Cave Clan Prone, who are like, okay, they're just kind of a group of aliens who want to kill us. And then later on you find out they're part of a bigger organization who's trying to wipe out all the humans, right? So I think I'm forgetting a lot of them. So once you're done with basically beating up a lot of these Prone guys who are part of the Ganglion, that's the name of like the enemy force in the game. I need water. So in the next chapter, they hype up like these like 4 characters: Dagon and Reese, Gajarg, that's right, and his like butler, like his maid, right? They hype up these 4 characters being like super powerful, super strong allies of the enemy who are gonna kick your fucking ass. And it's like, and in the same chapter, which is actually a cool chapter, where the hub base gets invaded and you actually fight there, which is not a thing you do often in the game. So like, so you fight Dagon and Reese, and they're complete pushovers. Like they're fucking chump shit. And they're like, oh, I can't believe I lost. And then they have like a temper. And then Reese has like a temper tantrum where she's like, I'm gonna kill all the humans. I'm so mad. It's like, oh my god, shut up. This woman is she's so annoying, by the way. Just, oh my god. So they hype those guys up, and they're just nothing. And like most of this chapter is based on hyping up Jagarj and his minions, right? He looks scary. He's like a Thundercats looking ass guy. And I was actually like excited to see what they would do with him. So in the next chapter, he helps lead you into a trap, right? And then he leads you into a trap, and you fight him. And he talks about a lot about like his intentions and stuff. And he's like, oh, I'm not actually part of the ganglion. They just hired me as a jobber because like our species, they blew up our planet, and they're basically holding us hostage, right? We're not even getting paid for this shit. So after you beat him, he's like, if you beat me, I will leave the ganglion. So you beat him, and he does that. And he tells the rest of his species, he's like, now we are vagabonds. Yay. And you never see him ever again. I kid you not, you never see him again. He's in 2 chapters in the whole game, where they hype the shit out of him in one of them, and then the next one he's just like, yeah, I'm a low-level jobber. Beat me up, and I'll completely disregard my loyalty to the ganglion. So he does. And that's it. Oh my god. You have no idea. They just feel so unfinished, like they're gonna do something with him. It makes these villains feel like they're just like Scooby-Doo villains who come and go. It's so annoying. And then Dagon and Reese come back in like a huge mech, like a fucking like juggernaut, like huge, gonna blow up your city mech. And then you beat them up, and they're like, oh, I can't believe this, and die. That's the end of them. Oh wait, no, there's one I completely forgot. There's like a blue tentacle lady who early on I thought was going to be like a big player in the plot, because she like talks some big shit. But she talks such big shit and then gets her ass utterly kicked the shit out of. Some people criticize Xenoblade 2 for like, oh, the villains sometimes, when you beat the villains in the game, but then in the cutscene they kind of beat you up, and that's sometimes true. I feel like it's less true than some people say. Like, people can only bring up like 2 examples, which, whatever, that's the other argument. But to its credit, it actually makes the villains feel intimidating. In this game, they just get their ass utterly kicked the shit out of, and then they keep acting all pompous like they never just lost entirely. So this woman comes back again later on, and she basically just does some asshole-like shit, and then you beat the fuck out of her, obviously. I don't even remember her name. She was so forgettable. She was the first of them. So there's her, there's Dagon and Reese, and then there's Jagarj and his minions. Gajarg. Is it Gajarg or Jagarj? I don't fucking remember. His name is stupid. Anyway, going past that, they're bad. The character design in this game ranges from great to fucking awful. Alma's design is super iconic and great. To a certain extent, also, some of the other characters like Van Damme and Nagi has a cool design. L has a great design as well. There's a lot of them that are great. I like Maya and Celica and Rock. They're all great. But some of them are trash. Some of them are bad. I'm trying to think of one. Fry. I don't like the way Fry looks at all. Ugh. Fry looks kind of gross. Bose looks terrible. Like I said, he's like an eyebrowless bald fuck. Why would you design a character like that? That's so weird. Like, you think he's like a samurai, like, kind of character, they give him like a top knot or something, but no, he's just bald. Fucking stupid bald idiot. Right? I'm trying to think of some, like, and I talked about Luxar. Some of the ganglion designs are bad. Luxar's design is bad, dude, bad. And Gajarg and his minion lady, that I can't remember the name of to save my life, they look cool. They look really cool. Honestly, Dogon and Reese also look pretty cool. It's just their personality that I hate. So yeah, that's it. Some of the character designs are good, some of them are bad. Some of the animations look really wonky. You can tell that some of them are motion tracked, but that's honestly a good thing compared to the manual animations, which look, you're kind of... I know they had to make a ton of animations. There are hundreds of attacks in this game. So I get not wanting to animate all of them. Some of them just look bad. They just look jank as fuck. I'm sorry. Okay. The Tyrants... they're this game's equivalent of the unique monsters mini-bosses from the other games. And they're just not great. They feel more like just random things that they place in the map to say, like, don't go here if you're early level. And there's a lot... I feel like they're a lot less interesting. I just feel like they don't have... The names are cool. Like they always are. Like there's like the Territorial Rotbard and stuff like that. Some of them are okay, but I just feel like most of them are so... They feel very insignificant compared to the Xenoblade 1 and 2's unique monsters. I feel like they don't have very interesting set pieces, most of them, and most of them are just kind of there. That's the problem with them, which makes the fact that the mini-boss theme is so good kind of unfitting. There are so many elements of combat, but some of them feel like incredibly niche and never useful, and I can't really think of specific examples right now. But there are a lot of elements in combat, and I feel like very little of them are actually relevant when you're fighting. Or they have like very minimal, like, rewards or returns, you know. Okay, now is where the big... we're gonna get ranty as fuck, because we're gonna talk about the main plot, and we're talking about the final boss. Hoo boy. Okay, so the plot. So you start off crashing on the planet. You find out that the ganglion are here and they want you to be dead. So you gotta quickly find the cryo chamber before they do, and they destroy it. Right? Makes sense. Simple premise. Easy to work off this, right? Easy. So after figuring out that the ganglion want you dead, you kind of just finagle about for a little while, not do a whole lot, and then they start doing real shit like attacking your city, and you're like, okay, these are a real problem. We're gonna go kick their ass. So you start they start upping their reason, their methods for finding the cryo chamber, right? And they find a lead, but then they go to the lead, and all they find is Gajarg and his minions who are ready to kick your ass. And there's no cryo chamber at all, even though they said there's definitely a piece of the cryo chamber here. There's nothing there. So you start getting kind of suspicious. You're like, okay, Lao, who's an important character in the plot, Lao. He's like, Lao told us that there was a thing here, and it's not. And both of his teammates are dead, despite the only people being there, despite there being no one there prior to Jagarj. That's kind of suspicious, right? So we think Lao is a spy. Because also when they attacked... Because then they attacked the city. I think they attacked the city before this, actually. And Lao is in charge of protecting the Vita, which is a super powerful mech that they can't have stolen, or else it'll be really, really bad. So, the Vita gets stolen by Jagarj. Jagarj. I think that's right. No, Gajarg. Fuck. Man, I can't remember what it is. I'm sorry. So it gets stolen. It's like, okay, Lao, weren't you in charge of doing that? That's also very suspicious. Also, how would they know where it is? They didn't even know where it was, yet they attacked it immediately? That's kind of strange, isn't it? So they start having a lot of suspicions about Lao, right? So... what happens next? So they're doing some random shit. I don't remember what exactly, but they're like, you gotta get over here fast because Lao is doing some crazy shit. And then you go to the oh fuck, hang on, I'll be right back. So I had to take a break. Where was I? So Lao is doing some crazy shit. You need to get over here right now. They're like, okay, we're coming. It's like, okay, What's the situation? What's going on? And they're like, Lao has we found where the cryo chamber is. We found like its definite location. Like we know where it is now, right? And they're like, Lao has the only copy of the data on him right now, and he's like blackmailing us. So he's like, yeah, I got it. What are you gonna do about it? I'm taking it to the ganglion because I'm actually a ganglion spy this whole time. And they're like, Lao, you asshole, why would you do that? Right? And he's like, I have my reasons. The ganglion are going to enjoy this. So he takes out their experimental skull, just runs the fuck away, goes to their base. So you chase him back to their base, right? And then you find him and you're like, Lao, what the fuck are you doing, right? And he's like, I hate this. I hate being in an android body, and I hate pretending to be human. On Earth, my wife and my child, they're both dead, Elma. And it's all your fault. And like, they're like, Elma, what's he talking about? Why is that your fault? And she's like, well, you see, when deciding who to put inside of the cryo chamber, so basically she says like, when deciding about who to put in the cryo chamber, they had very specific requirements for it. So like a lot of people didn't make it on for reasons like you're not smart enough or you don't contribute a lot, blah blah blah. So you're not allowed. So like a lot of people who were on board are people who were like strong military combatants or scientists and stuff like that, right? Or rich people, which he was really mad about. So he's like, but Lynn's like, you can't do this, Lao. And he's like, yeah, you're right, I can't. So he gives her the data, and then they leave. And like that's it for most of the plot. Like basically nothing happens aside from Lao being a spy, which is kind of interesting because he's like a playable character. Having him turn into a villain, that's interesting. But it feels like there's so little going on. Like if you do the side quests, it feels like there's a lot going on. But in the actual main plot, like the only required parts of the plot, it just doesn't feel like anything's happening. So in the last little bit of the plot is when things get crazy. Like, I feel like 90% of the plot is in the last chapter of the game. So, they go to the cryo chamber, and I'm going to talk about the final boss as well right here. So they find the cryo chamber, and they finally go there after Lao gave it to them. And they go inside, and they're like, I don't get it. Where are all the bodies in the cryo chambers? They're supposed to be here. Where the fuck are they? And almost like, well, you see. And then Luxar smashes through the fucking like roof in his suit, and he's like, you fucking idiots, I hate all of you. So then you fight him, and he's like, the reason why I hate you is because we are prophesized to be your slaves, and I don't want to do that. And they're like, what are you talking about? So they just kill him more. And it's like, and then Lao comes back. He actually didn't die after you beat the shit out of him, and he kills Luxar. But then like they fall. Actually, wait, no. I'm forgetting what order things happen. Sorry. Like, after they beat him, they explain that like, Elma explains like, oh yeah, no one was actually put in cryo sleep at all. Your consciousnesses are just inside of the androids. You're not controlling them remotely at all. So, like, she's like, we just copied your DNA so we can clone you. So, your original body isn't here, but your consciousness is, and we can clone you, so technically you are here. And then Doug gets super mad. He's like, oh my god, I can't believe you would do that and not tell us about it. But then Elma's like, nope, shut up. And he does. Because, I don't know, Doug doesn't do shit. So then the Luxar comes back and he's like, you are the descendants of our creators and also our enslavers, so now we are going to rise up, and it's like, we are actually the good guys, you are the bad guys. You win, I lose. I mean, you lose, I win. End of argument. So, then Lao kills him. And then they both fall into, like, the DNA ooze that's used to make the people, and it's like, their bodies fuse together, and then all of the DNA of every creature on Earth, like, comes inside them. And then they turn into a weird chimera, like, fusion. And then they go on like an exposition dump, where he's like, yes, that we are the descendants and they're going to enslave them. This is the human's true form. And it's like a weird chimera with a lion head on its like chest, and it's like, oh my god, why? And it's like, this is what a Telethia looks like in this universe. That's weird. So after you beat Lao, and I don't know why it's called Lao, because it's equal parts Luxar and Lao, but they call it Lao, I guess for dramatic effect. So you kill him. And it's like, it's fine, it's what he would have wanted. And Elma's like, well, we could just clone him. And they're like, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. But she's like, there's something I should tell you. One of us will not be being cloned, because one person was put in cryosleep. It was me. So she like turns off her android suit, and they all freak out. It looks like she just died. And then she comes out of her cryo chamber, and she's a weird alien. And it's like, Elma's been a weird alien the whole time, controlling a human body. And like, my immediate thought wasn't, oh, you're a weird space, like, princess, like, alien queen? That's kind of weird. My first thought was, wait, hang on a second. In your alien, like, true form, your skin is, like, pale, like pearl colored. Why is your mimeosome black? Like, that's a little bit weird. But like, I was like, her like alien design is really cool and all, and I was like, nice. Alien Elma. She explains like, oh yeah, I invented the Skells, and I invented the ship, and I invented cryosleep, and I invented cloning, and it's like, oh my god, what are you talking about? It's like she reveals that she's actually like the most important character in the whole thing. And it's like, okay. Like, I don't know how I feel about that, that last, like, revelation that she's actually an alien. Because I think it's cool that she's actually, like, that she's been behind it the whole time, and that she's, like, an alien. Like an evil one, but she was, like, controlling it all. Like, she was lying to people to try to make it seem like it was better than it is. But it's just like, oh, now that we're at the end, we're at the finish line, we saved everyone, you can't get mad at me. So they all kind of agree with that. But that's not really the part I'm contentious about. It's like, the point of her being like a super important like space princess who gave them all their technology. That's kind of weird. I kind of liked it when Elmo was just like a random military personnel. Like, I don't know, it made her feel like she was less like a chosen one figure and more of just like a tough person who succeeded despite just being a normal person. But it's like, no, she's a weird alien who is like a super genius. And that's cool, but I don't know. I kind of liked Elma when she was a normal person. No offense. Alien Elma. I was going to talk about the final boss, but I don't really have the energy to go into it on depth because I don't even want to think about it. It was bad. I had to do almost 20 hours of grinding just to beat this boss, which is like a huge difficulty spike. And usually Xenoblade games have difficulty spikes, but this was ridiculous. 20 hours almost of grinding, and I was just barely able to do it. It was crazy bad, and I did not enjoy a single second of it. And every time you want to retry the boss with your Skells, you gotta wait through all the cutscenes, and like I said earlier, 7 minutes of loading times for cutscenes that you're not gonna watch regardless. That is incredibly annoying. And on top of that, this is where I finally caved and wanted to turn on easy mode because I was just so done with this shit. After waiting through it, I waited through it at least 6 times, I want to say. Think about that. The amount of times I sat through all those cutscenes. So I was like next level done with this stuff. So I was like, I'll turn on easy mode. But you can't just turn on easy mode. You have to kill yourself a certain amount of times so it like pities you and turns it on itself. That's annoying. I wish you could just turn it off. I wish you could just turn it on by your own volition. Well, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Anyway. But the final boss is bad. It's basically just... I don't even want to go into it because I spent so much time trying to fight it and strategize against it that even thinking about it is giving me like PTSD, man. It's a bullshit fight. Like, there's a strategy for beating it, but man is it not easy and man is it bothersome. It's just not a fun final boss. Like I mentioned, the bosses are not fun. This is no exception. So like anyway, at the end, Lynn goes on a speech. She's like, the future of humanity is bright now that we've saved it. But then you get a post-credit scene where Elma walks into the DNA chamber and she's like, wait a minute, all of the consciousness backups and DNA are fucking gone the whole time. And they're like, that doesn't make any sense. If they're all gone, then why are they still in our weird android bodies? And she's like, I don't know. It has something to do with the planet. And earlier on, they like hint that there's something up with Mira, the planet, because they're able to communicate with the Manon despite not knowing the same language. But they don't really expand on that. And then after that, you see Lao, and he's alive somehow, despite becoming a weird chimera and then exploding. And he's not a human, by the way. I don't know how that works. So like, this is some like next level sequel bait, because I have so many questions that are not answered, and not just with this, but look at the whole game. And I think they didn't have to put in that post-credits scene. They didn't. It just made the ending feel so much less satisfying. And like, I just didn't know what to think about it. Like, if this game ever gets a sequel, I hope it does. That would be really cool. And like, if it never does, then it's just super weird. All this stuff that was like super... Like, Xenoblade 1 was not in need of a direct sequel. It had a very definitive ending that didn't really have any loose ends. Yet anyway, we did get like technically 2 sequels to it, which worked really well. But the thing about it was that if you imagine a world where those never came out, it still doesn't feel all that weird. It feels very self-contained. And you can say the same thing about Xenoblade 2. This game is not so much. Like, I feel like this needs a sequel to feel complete, and that's kind of sucky. So, okay, now I'm finally going to talk about my final thoughts. It's been a long time. So all the Xenoblade games are really ambitious, and I don't think that this one is any different from those. It's very ambitious, but I think that it threw more at the wall and had less stick, if you know what I mean. It just felt lesser, to an extent. It's really not easy to recommend to people who aren't fans of Xenoblade already. Like, if I recommend this to just any random person, it'd be very hard because of all these problems I just mentioned. But I think if you are a Xenoblade fan, it's worth playing. It's easily my least favorite of the 3 main games. Easily. But I'm still glad that I did play it, because I think I got enough good out of it to think it was worth doing, you know. And honestly, I think a few key changes could make this from like a good game to an actually great game. It just needs a little bit more. Like, and the final thing is that a lot of people want this game to come to Switch. And I'm no different. I don't want it to be trapped on the Wii U. It's a game that's worthy of, you know, continuing on, right? But I think they'd have to do a lot in the Switch version. Like, I think they'd have to do a lot to justify it being on the Switch without the convenience of the gamepad map. Because honestly, I think that is that much of a game changer. That, like, I feel like if this was on Switch and didn't have that and with no other changes, it would be an objectively worse version. Unless they significantly changed stuff like load times or side quest objectives or enemy drops, and there's just so much stuff. I was gonna go into what I'd want in a sequel for this game, but honestly, I don't know. I think they have a very very solid groundwork here, and they just need to expand on it. That's what I think. I think if they just iron out some of these problems, then the sequel, a theoretical sequel to this game, could be amazing. Truly amazing if they iron out all this shit. So yeah, that's what I think. I don't really like attaching a number score, but for the sake of tradition in the review chat in the Discord, I think I'd give it like somewhere between a 6 and a 7, probably leaning towards 7, because I did get a lot out of it. I think the fact that I played it for 100 hours shows that I do at least like it. So, yeah, that's all I really have to say. This was a long as fuck ramble. Bye-bye.